So wine is the most appearing term for really any alcoholic beverage, and definitely wine is wine
Hmm.
itself. Now, the next, it seems, having read your second chapter of your book,
Hmm.
it seems that the next most term is Tirosh, and this
Mm.
appears quite frequently, and especially I would say also for Jewish listeners, it appears in the second paragraph of the Shema. So it's something that's part of our
Mm.
daily liturgy, anyways. We're talking about
Hmm.
we're saying we're talking about wine, anyways.
Yeah.
So, can you, to be honest, like I wasn't entirely sure reading this.
Yeah.
So, can you, I'm going to
Yeah.
give it a, because my sense is it's like the harvest. It's like, but not literally
Yes.
the grapes, but it's some sort of a wine that's derived from the grapes associated with the harvest. Is that a fair
Yeah,
characterization?
yeah, totally. So basically, with Tirosh, we have these references that have made scholars wonder if we're actually talking about wine or if maybe we're talking about the raw materials themselves. Like maybe we're talking about grapes. So the best passage here is Isaiah 65, verse 8, I believe, which refers to Tirosh being in the cluster of grapes. And so people are like, hey, look, it's not referring to wine, it's referring to grapes. It's not even referring to juice, it's referring to grapes. So we see that, but we also see some people will point out, hey, there are some passages though that seems like you can drink tea roche, which would
Mm-hmm.
imply that it's at least juice or must of some
Mm-hmm.
kind. Um, there's a passage in Micah 6, a few others. But what I would point out is there's even references to intoxication. And that
Mm-hmm.
I would say that that really does point in the direction of we're talking about something that is wine. But so then the question is, well, what's the difference with yayin, right? Um, what you kind of get a sense of is people are associating it with harvest. So whether it's juice, so of course you're only going to get juice at harvest time, or the grapes themselves, which you're going to harvest at harvest time naturally.
Yeah.
And so what I think T. Roche ultimately refers to, and I'm definitely drawing upon the work of Carrie Walsh. I think that Tirosh is ultimately referring to the the freshly made wine at harvest time. So,
Mm-hmm.
in other words, Tirosh specifically refers to freshly made wine, not wine that hasn't fermented yet. I really don't like the sort of arbitrary and kind of anachronistic distinction between unfermented and fermented wine. I don't think that's applicable to biblical literature or the ancient world at all. Really, you have fermenting and fermented is kind of the distinction that I tend to make.
Mm-hmm.
So I think T. Roche then is young, it's fresh, whereas
Mm-hmm.
Yayin implies some aging to it. And I think why that might be important is because of some of the ways in which you might, for example, store your Yayin. So Yayin, if it's got uh, enough ABV, enough alcohol, you can store it and you can age it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you do that, there's a question. Of course, we're thinking of maybe modern storage practices where, oh, it's going to, benefit from time. And that may have been true in plenty of cases.
Mm-hmm.
But the ways that you would seal the amphorae or the different kinds of vessels to ensure that oxidization would not occur, that it would not turn into vinegar, for example, is you would need to use like pitch. You would need to use
Mm-hmm.
tree resin to really create tight seals, and you would use vessels that might not impart the best flavors. So when you're talking about yayin versus tea roche, that's why I think a distinction is helpful in biblical literature because with tea roche, you're not going to get all of those potential effects that you might not love about wine. The kinds of things like maybe the pitch, the resinous flavors, the
Mm-hmm.
whatever might be imparted from vessels like amphorae, which aren't wooden lovely
Mm-hmm.
oak barrels, for example.